My goal here today is to help you understand what happens to the mind and body after a mass shooting, and I hope to normalize the response that you may experiencing and offer practical tools for returning to campus and rebuilding safety, connection, and community. So I'll walk through three different areas. And first, what healing after trauma actually looks like. And second, how to navigate returning to campus. And third, how collective healing and community support can help you move forward. Everything I cover today is meant to support, not pressure, because it is your pace in terms of your healing journey. Healing after trauma is never linear. You may move forward and backward and feel okay one day, or even feel okay for 1 hour, and then the next hour or next day you feel overwhelmed. And this isn't a sign that you are doing something wrong. And it's simply how trauma recovers work. We often see recovery unfold in three different kind of broad stage. Again, this is broad stage. You may move between them at your own pace. The first stage is the acute response stage. It happens the first day of the trauma to weeks, which is mostly is what you're experiencing at this point. Your nerve system remains in survival mode as your body and mind try to process the immediately shock of what happened. And I will talk about the acute response stage and what are you experiencing. And then the second stage is adjusting and integration stage. And that takes weeks to months. And you begin to processing the event while you're also attempting to return to your daily routines. And this period's response involves balancing grief with gradual re-engagement. So after the winter break, and so when you return to campus in the spring semester, and that will be the adjustment and integration stage. And then third is recovery and growth stage. And that could take months to years, depends on the individual. And the trauma becomes integrated into your life narrative. Then hopefully a sense of safety returns gradually. And then some may discover even post-traumatic growth, finding meaning and strengths. So wherever you are on this linear, this timeline, either early, in the middle, or moving forward, eventually to recovery, this experience is valid. Whatever you're experiencing is valid. Healing takes time, and you don't have to rush through it, even though the pain is so significant and it feels so unbearable sometimes. So in the first days and weeks after traumatic events, like what you're experiencing right now, everything can feel overwhelming. So you may experience shock, numbness, hypervigilant, and fear, sadness, anger. A lot of those emotions are normal responses to a traumatic situation. And this is your body is trying to protect you. Even though the danger has passed, you're probably going to notice that you still feel unsafe everywhere. And then you're experiencing anxiety and panic. And some intrusive thoughts are very normal, and emotional overloads. Some people experience emotional overload. Some people experience numbness. And all those reactions, again, they're not weakness, and they're your nervous system working to protect you. They're working overtime. So trauma also can show up physically, and such as you may have trouble sleeping because your nerve system is overworking, right? And try to stay vigilant, and it's hard. And sometimes you may have nightmares, difficulty concentration if you try to process cognitive space, cognitive information, and your memory will be impacted. Short-term working memory will be impacted. Avoidance of kind of reminders or avoidance behaviors and to certain places and people, and emotional exhaustion. And so all this impact when you go back to school, if you're still working on, I don't know how many of you are on campus and how many of you at home. And so you may still working on your homework or some internship application or whatever that you're working on, and that could be impacted. And also your social life and daily routines. And all those are expected, and it will ease with support. So support is very important. Many of you may experience survival guilt. And yesterday at our parents' workshop, the survival guilt came up a lot. And this is very typical in terms of traumatic events and survivors. And thoughts like, why am I here? Why am I alive when others aren't? Right? I don't deserve to feel good or okay. And why me? So all those feelings are painful, but extremely common, like I said, after common violence. And it especially emerges when your empathy is so deeply activated and your nerve system is overwhelmed by questions that have no easy answers and with senseless act like this. And so it really comes with empathy, but not from doing anything wrong. Because our nerve system will attack us when not our mind is going to go inward, and when things doesn't make sense and start judging us and criticize us. But this is not something you have done, that you're not doing anything wrong. So be compassionate and be gentle to yourself. And I want to continue to talk about why survival guilt happens. It is because your brain is trying to make sense of something senseless, right? And humans, we're wired to look for fair, right? Fairness and control. And when something feels so random like this, and so sad and so shocking, and the mind often turns inward and blames ourselves, as I said earlier. And again, that deep empathy combined with this sense of helplessness and really creates very intense emotional pain for others who are suffering, for the people that you have lost, right? You care about, the community that is in pain. So we are carrying a lot of empathy and a sense of helplessness. And young adults, like you're emerging adult in the college, kind of environment, and you are also going through a critical stage of identity development, which also meaning that you're especially vulnerable to this pattern. And I also want to acknowledge, so some of you here may had experienced previous mass shooting or violence or disaster or previous trauma that maybe is related, kind of different type of trauma. Or you may have pre-existing condition such as anxiety, depression, neurodiversity, neurodivergent students. And so that also put you in a vulnerable space for being re-triggered, kind of nerve system, even being more, carry on more weight at this time. And also, how does survival guilt show up? And you may feel sad. You may feel shame and guilt and anger towards yourself, to the situation, to the world. And then also sometimes because the pain is so much and we have this kind of avoidance, right? We want to heal first, and it's hard for us to accept help because it's vulnerable. Behaviorally, you may experience withdrawal, avoid people, hesitant to ask for help, and push yourself too hard to earn this kind of, well, I survived and I need to work harder. But by naming this pattern is the first step towards compassionate healing. A few principles can help normalize your experience, in which we are doing now in this panel. And survival guilt is human. That makes us human. And allow your emotions and don't judge them. Rebuild the safety first. Understanding them comes later. Stay connected is very, very important. Isolation intensifies guilt. And which is why this type of workshop and webinar is so important, because the communities comes together, we heal together. And gently challenging your self-blame, you didn't cause or control what happened. And consider talking with a trauma-informed therapist. Remember, reaching out, it's a sign of resilience and strength, not weakness. And here I want to talk about in terms of traumatic grief. We cannot, kind of ignore this because this is a grief process. This is the traumatic grief process. And so, it's important for us to understand that the stages of grief. You first, and also grief comes after trauma has its own rhythm. And this first stage is shock and numbness. And you may move between shock, hyperarousal, meaning disruption, sadness, anger, or guilt. Kind of, again, that's not linear, right? So you can move, that is linear. Those are moving through stages. Eventually, with time and support, people reach reorganization. Our brain try to make sense. Our body, our brain, our mind is trying to calm and try to reach that reorganization, and sometimes even post-traumatic growth. So there isn't any kind of a correct timeline. Your pace is your pace. But remember, there's a process. And coming back to, I want to talk about in terms of coming back to campus. And this is a big emotional step. I don't know how many of you here today are still on campus and how many of you are going back to home already. And I assume that probably there are some international students on this call. And so it is a big step right now, whether you're staying on campus or returning back to campus in the spring semester. And it is completely normal to feel anxious, fearful, sad, or disconnected because your brain is trying to numb and trying to cope, right? And familiar places may trigger in memories, and just be prepared. Concentration, again, that may feel harder. Sleep may be disrupted. Your nervous system is trying to relearn that you are safe. And you might find yourself scanning for exits and startled by sounds or avoiding certain buildings. And this is all normal. And you may need some breaks or more rest. None of this means you're not ready. It means that you're healing. So ease your return and return gradually, right? If you can do that, visit campus early with a friend, with family members, start with short stays, sit where you feel more in control, and near exit is okay. And carry grounding tools, whatever that is. It could be a stuffed pet animal, it could be a fidget spinner, whatever that make you feel grounded and safe. And give yourself permission to step out if things becomes overwhelming. That's self-regulation. It's not failing. It's not weakness. So in terms of academic support and social support, again, the trauma affects our memory, attention, cognitive, space and motivation even. So this is not laziness, it's biology. Our body is responding. Please talk to your professors, your advisors, academic deans, early about academic flexibility, academic accommodation. If it is you are noticing that you have some kind of mental health concern, and you can get a note from your doctor, and your disabilities resource center should be able to help you to get accommodation. And also faculty member, I imagine, in Brown or other university, and that, my experience, we are all very accommodating for students with mental health needs. But you need to communicate and advocate for yourself. Socially, give yourself permission to set boundaries. It's okay to say no. Some students want closeness, right? Community. Some people want space, and they need to process alone first before they can reach out to others. Both are valid as long as you're not intentionally isolating yourself and struggling alone, that you already reached to the level of clinical significance. Stay connected in whatever way that feels right for you. I also want to just acknowledge that international students carry different burden. I'm doing a screen share. In the ideal scenario that I want to interact with our students and wanted to know how many of you are international, how many of you are undergrad students, and how many of you are graduate students. And so for international students, you carry additional burden. Culture shock around violence, right? So that's very valid. Away from your family and the support system, you have language barrier when you have to disclose and describe emotions in a different language. If you're not, working with somebody who share the same cultural background. Cultural norms that discouraging express feelings. And so in the Chinese culture, it's hard to, people are not used to express feelings. And you have visa challenge and also academic pressure, financial concerns. So all that are very challenging. So collective healing, which we're doing now, while individual healing is essential, it's profoundly powerful. It's coming together as a community like today. Collective healing, acknowledge that trauma like this affects not just individuals, but the entire community. And then recovery happens best when we are supporting each other, and because it reduces isolation and it really strengthens our resilience, and it helps to restore a sense of belonging. So when we have shared grief, and shared vulnerability and shared meaning making, this all support recovery. So when we support each other today, we are creating space where people, when us feel understood, seen, and safe. Thank you for your time, presence, and courage today.